Is this the end for Airbnb? Over the last few years, furnished apartments in city centers of tourist attractions all over the world have gone through the roof. Landlords have been renting their furnished apartments in desirable areas for a few days per week, up to a couple weeks, to tourists, digital nomads, and slow travelers. In some destinations around the world, this has pushed locals outside of city centers into suburbs. Local tenants often can't afford to stay in the parts of the city that they love. In some parts of the world, tenant advocacy groups have put pressure on politicians to pass local laws that limit landlords' ability to rent to short-term tenants. Normally, tenant advocacy groups don't have the political sway to force politicians to do much in terms of legislation. But things are different now. You see, billionaire hotel advocacy groups are tired of watching local landlords rent furnished apartments to tourists, slow travelers, and digital nomads, because they're losing business. All they have is hotel rooms to rent. This has forced billionaire hotel owners into bed with local tenancy groups to put pressure on local politicians to pass laws that to stop local landlords from renting furnished apartments for a few days or a few weeks per month. In New York City, for example, this year in September, Wired magazine reports that Local Law 18, which came into force, it almost bans Airbnb entirely. Only those who live in the place that they're renting and are present when someone is staying there can qualify, and people can only have 2 guests at a time. Is this the death rattle for Airbnb? If this way of thinking goes worldwide, will this eventually end slow travel as we know it? So what is slow travel? Slow travel is long-term travel. It's people that are not happy with just spending 1 week or 2 weeks of the year enjoying the world. They travel around a region of the world, maybe 10 or 15 different cities, 6, 8, 10, 12, over maybe a week or 2 in each spot. And they spend time and get to know each spot. They're not just popping in. And so they're generally only renting for a week or 2. And these laws that prohibit renting for less than a month and also prevent an apartment owner from renting the whole apartment to a slow traveler or a digital nomad, they would prohibit that sort of behavior. About 10 days ago, I did a video with a gentleman named Iggy where we talked about this concept of a travel wheel. The way the travel wheel would work is that you would have, for example, let's say 10 or 15 locations in one region of the world, maybe Central America, Mexico, South America, Southeast Asia. So you'd have 10 locations in one of these regional areas, let's say Southeast Asia. And someone would spend a week in one place, then move to the next place for a week, move to the next place for a week. And after 12 weeks, they'll have experienced 12 locations for a week each. We called that a travel wheel. Travel wheels would require some kind of city ambassador, and that's something that we would probably need to do if we were going to do this. A city ambassador would do things like find an apartment that's suitable in a good area, help find the furniture for it, provide information about the city that the person on the travel, the group of people traveling through the travel wheel would use, so that they would immediately know about the city when they arrive. Ambassadors might also have a YouTube channel. They might provide some kind of consultancy service where people could call them on the phone and ask questions, and they could charge by the hour, for example. These are the types of behaviors that a city ambassador would do on one of these travel wheels if they lived in one of these cities. Of course, they could be an expat or they could be a local, so long as they were able to communicate well and they knew information about that city. So the question is, would a slow travel wheel save slow travel if a lot of these cities instituted these concepts of the landlord has to be there? Well, there's a couple ways you could think about that. One is that if a club rented the place for a year, you'd have long-term rents. You wouldn't be someone who's trying to rent for a week or 2. you would be renting for 12 weeks on a travel wheel, and as a membership of the membership club, you would be spending a week or two in each place, and maybe that would be interpreted differently under the law. And also, those apartments wouldn't be in the public domain. People wouldn't know about them unless they were a member of that club and they were signing up for the travel wheel. I did a survey on the last interview where people could answer questions about how big should the wheel be, how many cities should be in a wheel, 8, 10, 12, 50. Do people want to go for a whole year, week, or a whole year, month, this sort of thing? And we got a lot of answers, which we're going to be reporting to you shortly. I also got an email from a gentleman named George, who's one of our slow travelers. He's a slow traveler, meaning that he follows this theory of he doesn't want to just spend a few days in a place or even a week or two. He likes spending more time generally. And so he looks for apartments in desirable places and stays for a little longer. And he has some ideas that are kind of interesting that I wanted to share with you today. So I'm going to bring him on. I'm going to bring him on this interview, and we're going to talk about maybe some ideas about what an ambassador could be if the New York rules start to travel around the world, meaning that a landlord either has to be in the property, and would that landlord be an ambassador, that kind of thing. And so he had some ideas that kind of that seem consistent with the New York rule. So let's invite George on the channel and talk to him about it. And today we're lucky to have George on the channel. And George is one of our slow travelers in the community. And welcome to the channel, George.
Thank you, Dan. Good to be back.
You sent me an email about Iggy's idea about the travel wheel, and I loved some of your ideas, and I wanted other people to hear what they were. Why don't you just talk about the general idea about how you slow travel and how you enjoy like just getting a room in an Airbnb, and what sort of difference that made in practical terms and maybe even in social terms of finding out about a place you're going to.
Yeah, so the first time I discovered the renting a room was the first time I went to Colombia in, let me think here, 2018 probably. And I was looking at becoming an expat when I retired in Colombia. And it was there was a couple of places that were near the airport and were just a bedroom, and I just hit it off with the landlord and just really enjoyed the experience. She was over the top helpful. We had a little bit of a language barrier, but we worked through that. And yeah, she's still a friend of mine. So, I mean, the part of it that I enjoyed the most is being able to stay connected with people that I've traveled to their country and shared part of their lives with, I guess.
Yeah. We had a similar experience in Mexico City. We wanted to stay in this area that friends had told us about that was just a beautiful area of Mexico City. But the Airbnbs there were quite expensive. They were like $50 a night. And we checked on these room rentals, which we've done before, but not very often. And it was much, much cheaper. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was like maybe 60 or 70% off. And yeah, she had pictures of her condo there. She was a lawyer in Mexico City. Beautiful condo, balcony. She had 3 bedrooms there and was just renting out one of them. One was her office and one was her bedroom. And Chung and I stayed at her house, and she spoke really great English, and she was sort of an ambassador for us. She told us her favorite restaurant. She told us where she likes to shop, where she takes her dog for a walk, all sorts of, parks near us, and museums. And we probably chatted with her for a few hours while we stayed there. And she was a delightful person, and it really increased the quality of our experience. It shortened our learning curve about what to go and see in Mexico City. And it gave us a lot of confidence about just being able to walk around Mexico City. We'd never been there before, and it was really a great experience for us.
And I think one of the invaluable things that these local ambassadors do is they more importantly tell you maybe where not to go, what not to do. And putting up a boundary around, okay, don't go to this area, don't, especially in countries like Colombia, where you're in a city like Bogota, you can't just get in a taxi and just take off. You have to be careful.
Yeah, exactly. Great point. And so So when you were watching Iggy's idea about the wheel, regional travel, and you thought about this ambassador idea, tell us more about how that would work, your idea about it, how that would help things.
So what I did, and we talked about this in the first video, I moved to Albania, and because the countries around me during COVID were closed, I had to travel within that country, and I could get into Kosovo, and I think Macedonia were the only two countries I could travel to. But then when I came back the next year, restrictions had loosened up, and I could go to the EU countries and many more countries. So, yeah, my idea was to base my location in an affordable place, and then travel short trips, maybe a week or so, to other locations near there. But I also, listening to Iggy and you talk, I also thought of an idea of where you could, let's say, land in Athens and then slow travel. Every 2 weeks, you go to another city along the Balkan Peninsula there in Eastern Europe. You could go all the way through Macedonia, Serbia, Croatia, Bulgaria, all of those countries there, and just go to the capital city for 2 weeks. And if there's not enough in that particular city, then you could branch out in that area and go out into the countryside, let's say into the mountains in Romania or something like that, where you could get a break from city life all the time. But again, using a hub, you like you said, having a wheel, and made me think about, well, there's a hub to the wheel, the center, and then the spokes go out to the other points of interest. So it was just really intrigued on his idea and the discussion that you guys had about it.
Yeah. And then you also talked about how this would be a great thing, not for everyone, but for retired expats that have more of a social nature to them. If they have a nice place, but they would like to host people, they could earn a little bit of extra money. They could teach people about the city, and it would reduce their expenses, and it would be sort of a natural way for them to get to know people, maybe from their home country or other countries that they're interested in meeting people, and host them with a room in their house and be part of one of these wheels rather than an empty apartment, is the way you put it.
Exactly.
It'd be somebody that
Exactly.
knew something about the city, so sort of an ambassador for the city is part of in these wheels. So it's sort of an interesting idea, because one of the objections we got from some people watching the video about the wheel was, wait a second, are you going to have a hard time finding landlords that want to give you a 1-year lease, but then you're going to be putting someone new in there once a week? They don't know who that person is. They haven't vetted them or whatever. They are not looking at their Airbnb. So that may or may not end up being a problem. But if you have these, community of these retired expats in the region that have rooms in their house and are willing to host people. And the other thing I loved about your ideas, you talked about the difference, how as a single person traveling, it's sometimes better to go into these ambassador or bed and breakfast where there's an ambassador there, because you have someone to talk to at the end of the day, or ask about what you're going to do the next day, that sort of thing. And maybe even in larger bed and breakfast where there's a couple other travelers there that you could talk to about what they did and different things like that.
Exactly. When I was in Buenos Aires last winter, exactly that instance happened, where I teamed up with a couple of young ladies who wanted to go see the soccer stadium, but they were a little bit tentative about going down there by themselves.
Yeah.
So I went with, and we had a great time, enjoyed it, no problems. And it was just on the fly kind of a thing, and sometimes those kinds of outings are some of the most fun.
And this is a very practical concept. I get, once in a while, I'll get an email from somebody they'll say something to me like, "Dad, my check is only, whatever, 1,600, 1,800 a month." Slow travel could be expensive with these short-term rentals, because, you're not paying a monthly rate, you're paying this weekly rate. And if you're just renting a room in someone's house and you're able to see reviews from other people and they're fine, they're okay, and they have the internet and a place to make coffee or toast in the morning before you head out for the
Yeah.
day or what, that kind of thing, that you could save the money. You have somewhere where it's more feasible for you to go week or 2 week, 2 week, 2 week, because you can't afford the month, and if you have a smaller budget, it's easier to hit those numbers. So whether you're a couple or a single, depending on what your budget is, it's a way to do exploratory visits. If you're looking for a place to retire, with a lower budget, is another concept that is built into that.
Yeah, it is. And I had another occasion in Colombia where I was in a small village. It was my record breaker, one night, cheapest fee I ever paid. The conversion was $8.63 for one night. And it was a hostel, it was a like a bed and breakfast or a hostel, and there wasn't really a whole much to do there. It was a really small little coffee village, but it had a couple of nice coffee processing facilities there that I wanted to see, and I wanted to talk to some people, and you could really do a hands-on tour of how they actually make coffee and bag it up and send it out overseas. So it was just a one-day thing. I just went up there for one night and 2 days and came back. It was wonderful.
Right. Yeah, if my memory serves me, my lowest ever was for Chung and I. We stayed at what was once a hotel, but became sort of like a hostel, except that each private rooms, and we had our own bathroom. And it was $6 a night, and it was in Battambang, Cambodia, and which is a charming little city in Cambodia. And so, and of course, it had the common area where people would shoot pool or whatever, typical hostel. But it was not primarily 20-year-olds. It was families going there. Everyone was there, which is it was a real nice experience. We stayed there for a full week in that hostel or hotel, really is what it was. So yeah, there's lots of examples of this. So the other thing now, for those of you who don't know, George is a slow travel, meaning that he likes to explore the world, and he doesn't want to be in a rush. And so when you're doing that, if you don't want to rent per month, and so you're slow traveling a part of the world, and depending on what your budget is, it's always nice to save money. And so rather than renting full apartments for whatever, $20-$30 a night, because it's short term, which will add up, that's $1,200 or $900, say, at $20 a night, you're looking at $600 a month if you can get it that low for an apartment in some parts of the world. But more typically it's 25 or 30 now post pandemic. And so at $30 a night for 30 days, you're looking at almost $1,000. And that adds pretty quick. So more typically, what are you finding when you go to these, just a room in an Airbnb? What's the range that you end up paying usually?
It's a little over $10. I'd say between $10 and $15 a night. Right in that neighborhood. It depends on, of course, location, country, and how close you are to the center of the activities you want to participate in. Right.
Yeah, well said. And that makes a big difference. If you can average whatever $12 a night, and for 30 days, now you're talking, was a 360.
Yeah.
And so, as you get down to 360 a month for rent, if you can average that, then it's easier to stay in these numbers under 2,000, as you slow travel around the world, maybe even under 1,500 for some people.
And like I said in my email, the other positive effect to this is you're not adding to the problems that a lot of these cities are seeing now with people blocking Airbnb out of the rental market and driving the cost up for locals. Because if the apartment just sits empty for 4 months of the year, well, they're going to have to charge more to make up for that.
Right.
So yeah, it helps. I think it helps the local economy also to do it this way.
Yeah, certainly. And that's one of the reasons around the world Airbnb is having some resistance, political resistance, because they're hearing from the locals about how they can't rent anymore. My landlord kicked me out. I was paying, $200 a month in rent, and now they're renting it for, $25 a night, which is, adds up. The landlord's doing fine, assuming they don't have too much vacancy, but now they have to go try to find another place for 200 a night. So that also is a important consideration. And this is a way. So you have these retired expats that have, or just locals that have a room in their house, and you're not
Yeah, and I think
displacing.
it's just both of those. We can do it both ways, and just have maybe a filter on the database where it says, you want to share a room with an expat, or look for expat type, or do you want to do one with a local?
When we were in southern Mexico, almost to Guatemala, we stayed in San Cristobal, and we stayed with a local couple there, and they both spoke a little English, and by then we'd picked up a few phrases here and there of Spanish, and it was really lovely. The social aspects of it are amazing. So they were a younger couple, much younger. They're probably in their late 20s, and Chung's in her late 30s. I'm 63. This was probably 4 years ago, so we were both a little younger. But they had their friends over there, and he played the guitar, and his girlfriend sang, and so they were singing all these local lullabies, if you will, and their friends were joining in singing, and we were enjoying the local culture in a real sense inside a home.
Yeah.
And and the food and everything, in these places, typically you have access to the kitchen, and you may have your own bathroom, or you're sharing a bathroom, and it's like you're an equal renter while you're there. It's not like, at least I have not experienced where the owner of the place is treating me, like I'm, a slave or something, or they give you a key, you come and go as you please, you cook in the kitchen. You may be cooking your own foods, or if you make friends with them, which isn't required, you might have a meal with them, or you cook a meal and share it with them, or they cook one, share it with you. There's all sorts of variations depending on whether or not you have a rapport with them and what sort of personality they are. But along the way, when you do this, it gives you a better feel for the place. And the other thing that we really, one of my goals, in my trajectory, I thought I would have more money when I retired than I ended up with. And so I thought I would be based in the US, and that I would travel the world and come back, do this, go on these trips.
Yeah.
But when I realized that I could live for much cheaper overseas, I decided I would get a foreign base. At some point, I'm still loving slow traveling right now. And then I would travel maybe 3 to 6 months of the year from there. And what I notice is that when you're traveling culturally like that, and it becomes so much more interesting than just having, it's great to have a base to come back to. Many people like that. For me, to me, it doesn't make that much difference to me. I like moving forward, learning more about the world. But for people like me, if they have a smaller budget, it allows them to travel the whole year if they want to, and have a more interesting life doing it. And some people might have concerns about privacy. No, I have to have my own place. And there's variations of that. So if you save enough money, so let's say you're slow traveling half the year, and you save enough money, then parts of that, when you need a break, you can rent an apartment if you want to alter yourself, or a hotel room, because you have options now, because you're not at the top line of your budget all the time. And so it gives great options to people. So
it does. What I found about slow travel, and you're absolutely right, absolutely the most expensive part is coming back here to the US. Oh dear.
It is. Yeah.
I have to go overseas to save money.
It's true.
I've got grandkids, and I've got, payments on a van, and I got all this stuff that, it gets expensive quick here.
Yeah, it's the same for me. I leave to save money. And I think that's really what the bottom line is.
Yeah.
Really, you live a better life when you're outside the U.S. And be just the choices you have and just a feeling of freedom when you're not at the top line of your budget all the time.
Like you said, it gives options. You have options, and that's so important it just helps lower the level of anxiety. Just
Absolutely. And the other part of my original plan was I was going to travel a part of the year. So what that meant is that I thought my budget would be lower in the US, and that I would be going to Japan and Europe and all these places, and that would be expensive. So I would only be able to travel 3 months of the year,
yeah.
right? That was
Yep.
what my original idea is. But now with this idea of slow travel, depending on what your budget is, whether you're getting your own private apartment in each place or you're doing this sort of community thing, which is honestly I thought was in many parts it's a better choice when you're single. But what it gives you is this option to go to places that are more expensive. Like the reason we picked, like when we were in Mexico City, the reason we picked that apartment was because we were thinking maybe we can't go to Mexico City, which is one of the most amazing cities in the world for people that don't know. If you're always going to the beach in Mexico, Mexico City is amazing and it has beautiful neighborhoods. And we were able to go to places because we were willing to share this gorgeous condo with the wraparound balcony and a view of the city with this lovely lady. We got to do things we couldn't have done otherwise. And it would allow us also to go to parts of Europe maybe that would be too expensive, depending on what your budget is, by renting a room in someone's home rather than trying to rent the whole place. So So there's saving money. There's a built-in ambassador. We talked about that. It helps the local economy. These are all things from your email. And you also talked about teaming up. Talk about what the idea was in your teaming up with like-minded people. What are your thoughts about that?
So the example I gave of the two young ladies who wanted to see the soccer stadium, because World Cup and all of that had just happened, right. And they had just won the World Cup down there, and so there was a lot of activity and tourism stuff in the soccer stadium in Buenos Aires, but it's not in a very good neighborhood. And we jumped on the bus. They asked me, are you going to go down there to see it? And I kind of sensed that they were like looking at me like an uncle or somebody who could kind of help them, keep an eye on things or whatever. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll go down there. And we just took the hop on, hop off bus, drove down, rode the bus until it got there. And we got off, and it was a little nerve wracking, but everyone was very nice, and they took the photos they wanted, and we waited for the next bus to come by, and it worked. It worked out slick. So yeah, anytime you can just run into people, whether it be, in Buenos Aires or Dubrovnik or wherever it is, there's always something that you can learn about. Oh, well, have you seen this or have you done that?
Yeah.
From another traveler.
Exactly.
It was just really easy to do that if you're in an area. And I guess that's why hostels are so popular with young people, because they congregate together and they can team up on the problem of, okay, we want to go see these 5 things, but we only have money for 2.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's usually one in the bunch. And when I was single, I would stay in hostels from time to time. When I first got to a city, because there's so much information you get when you do that. And then I would rent an apartment, maybe 3-4 days in. And once in a while I would go, when you're in a hostel, they usually have like an itinerary of things going on. One of them is usually a bar hopping night. And when you're in a group of 20 people, even if it's a city or, you may not want to go out alone because you just new there, you don't know what the safe areas are yet. But if a host at a hostel is taking out 20 of you bar hopping, that's a pretty low security risk. And so I would do that kind of thing, or join whatever, go to a museum or go to an art festival or a parade or whatever when I'm new in a city that I maybe before I'd scope the city out I wouldn't be willing to do. So there's all sorts of benefits in community, especially when you're single, that come out of it.
And it also helps break down barriers when you're back home. There's been some social upheaval here in this country lately, where people of my age and my generation are seem to be a little bit divided from the younger, the 20 somethings, philosophically, for a whole bunch of different reasons. But it helps break down those barriers, even just in between your own nationality.
To me, one of the most amazing things about travel is learning about yourself and the world. And when you have exposure to more different people of different along the ideological spectrum, you learn things maybe that you, if you will, that you wouldn't have learned otherwise. You wouldn't, when you look into the eyes of someone who seems reasonable and nice and interesting, and they're spouting something that you thought was a terrible idea your whole life, and you see it from their perspective, and you hear it, you may not change your beliefs completely, but it just lets you know that that some of their ideas, why they have those ideas, and it sort of humanizes them for you.
Yes.
So you talked about, so your idea is different than Iggy's, and or not different. I think the way you put it is, it'd be nice to have both. You have this wheel where people that, in Iggy's example, he wants to travel with friends in a 2-bedroom apartment and have just a set course. I think his original idea is week, but he's open to the idea of different weeks, but 1 or 2 weeks or whatever, or even longer. But this is different in kind because, and you also talk about having an ambassador in each city, which is also an idea that I've had. My idea had this concept of people sort of putting their homes, creating wheels, trading their house into these wheels. And his was, oh, let's all set up the wheels. People just come and jump on it. And so those are variations. And this, now you're talking about having maybe, if you will, ambassadors in each city that have a room or two in their house that they're putting on the wheel. And so whether it's a week or 2 weeks or whatever, you have a built-in ambassador with a place to stay. And then that opens up all these other possibilities about what the ambassadors do. Like, do they tour these people, or do they, different services they could provide that people would be interested in, and the whole experiment of having this sort of ambassador-hosted wheel with the ambassador in the home. People could try different things, touring people, or making food, or having a list of things or itineraries they could do. And then also potentially maybe not just offsetting the cost of their apartment as a retired expat by having it on this wheel, but also maybe services they could provide, not just provided by themselves, but the knowledge of others. Maybe, well, there's just a tour over here you can do, and another tour over here, just an information base. And so this experiment of what are other ambassadors doing in other cities, and does my city have that?
So our Airbnb has a feature, gosh, it's slipping my mind right now, activities or things to do.
I think it's
experiences, that's what it is. Yeah. And they have captured that side of it is, if you want to experience the wonderful barbecue on a night out in Buenos Aires, you can sign up online to do that. And I mean, I would guess that it would be up to each individual how involved they want to be, and the process of adding them to I keep referring back to a database where all of this information would be kept. Just having them fill out a form on that database would be able to tell you, okay, they have a room, they have a kitchen, they have a separate bathroom, and they can also rent you a car, or you have I think one of your landlords in the Philippines rents you a scooter also, right?
Yeah,
those kinds of variables are going to be too numerous for you to try to pin that down, but you could have a space for it where options or features or whatever it's called, what those people will do. The traveling, whether it be with a small group of 2 couples or 3 couples, or whether it be singles or a group of singles, I think it could go either way, right? I mean,
whether or not it would bear out to have a separate database from Airbnb or to use them. I don't
Yeah.
know if, I don't know whether or not that would bear out in terms of the maintenance costs of the database, and
Right.
so that's a little difficult to tell, especially with $10 to $15 prices on room shares. If that, and we're not talking in New York, we're talking in, if you will, retired cheap countries, where
Right.
you're looking
Yes.
at 10 to 15. New York, probably a room is 50 or 75 or $100 instead of a $200 or $300 hotel room.
Just excited to hear that there's a group of people that are interested in the same thing I am, and just keep communicating and talking back and forth and sharing ideas and
Yeah.
experiences. And your website and your YouTube channel are wonderful for that. Thank you for doing all the hard work that you do. Thank you so much.
So at the end of this video, there'll be a little button that says survey, and we'd like your feedback. Would you want your own apartment for sure, or would you be up for the idea of being a guest in someone's apartment who's an ambassador for that city? Would you want to be an ambassador in a city? And if so, what sorts of services do you think would be interesting to provide? And if you were an ambassador, would you want to start a YouTube channel? Would you want to provide a consultancy service where you're paid by the hour for people inquiring about that city before they get on the travel wheel? And if you're in a city and you think it'd be fun to provide various services in that city, tours, whatever, drop some ideas about that also. And if you live in a city, or whether you're a local or an expat, and be interested in providing various services to people who are traveling on this wheel, just give some ideas of what those services might be. And finally, leave your email, and we'll include you in, if we eventually will probably start doing more private videos about this, because it's very specialized information and not everyone's interested. So the survey will provide you with the ability to leave your email so we can include any private messages to you. Thanks for watching our video. Please make sure to like, comment, or subscribe, and click that survey and leave us some information.